Welcome everyone to Array Global Accreditation's monthly workshop, September. What a beautiful month. And what a great month to have some professional development. School's underway for most of you, and this is a great time to sharpen some of our skills, be reminded of some different strategies that we can implement. And we're excited to have you all here from all over the world. I see people from Europe, Asia, Africa and the US. So we're just excited, so excited to see you. And we're excited about Dr. Mike's presentation that he has for us today. He's one of our most popular, if not the most popular presenter that we have. And we're so appreciative of his work, his leadership, and his wonderful experience that he's willing to share with us. A few different things before we get started, before I turn the time over to Dr. Mike. I just wanted to remind everyone to take a few minutes and look at our website, look at our academic contests. We have an excellent academic contest that's going on right now for grades kindergarten through grade 12. It is a writing contest that encourages your students to write a letter to someone that has made an impact on them, that has helped them form their character and develop who they are. And so I would encourage you to get on. This is a writing contest that even your kindergartners can participate in. And then what a great opportunity even for your students that'll be graduating this year. We'd also like to let you know that we will be visiting some of your countries in the next few months, and we're excited about that. We'll be doing some workshops in some different countries and visiting many schools. So if you see some of our workshops come up in your area, please come in and participate in those. And then lastly, just encourage you to look at our accreditation services. We'd love to work with your school. And when we talk about accreditation, we talk about school improvement because we firmly believe that accreditation is a pathway. It is a process to school improvement. So I encourage you to get onto our website, look at our different services, see how we can best support you. And then again, we just welcome you anytime that we do have a workshop that takes place in these monthly workshops that we have to offer. We will turn the time over to Dr. Mike. We're excited to have him on. He has been an educator at so many levels, from professor, teaching leaders how to be principals and superintendents, down to being a teacher in the classroom. He was like myself, he was a science teacher, so love of science, but also been an administrator in schools and has had a major impact in the state of Idaho and across the United States and into many countries. He has touched the minds and the hearts of many educators and students. And with that, we will turn the time over to him. And please stay tuned to the end because we have Dr. Ray with his words of wisdom. And we also have a survey that everyone needs to fill out in order to get their participation certificate. So with that, Dr. Mike, I'll turn the time over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jake. And first of all, I just want everybody to know what an honor it is for me to be with you today. And thank you so much for taking time out of for what is for most of you the evening, Sunday evening. And thank you for being with us. We do not take for granted your choice to come and join us for these workshops. So thank you very much. Before we get started with the presentation itself, there's a few caveats that I want to share with you about the workshop today. First of all, we are not going to be talking about strategies in student engagement using technology. We have done a number of workshops in that area. There are lots of resources for that, but it still comes down really in terms of student engagement to those one-on-one relationships that you develop with your students that show them that you really do have an interest in who they are and those kinds of things. So that's caveat number one. Caveat number two is that all of the material, the presentations, the strategies that I'm going to be sharing today, I have actually used in my classrooms, both at the middle school level, at high school level, and at collegiate level with and undergraduate and graduate students. So that's one of those things that it's not something that I've read about, it's something that I've actually done. And I think in many cases, many of you are probably also doing the same kinds of things. but it's always nice to hear other people talk about their successes with it so that you can go, yeah, that's why I do those kinds of things. So that works out well. But the third caveat is maybe the most important. And I've done lots of workshops, both in person and online, and those kinds of things. And it seems like so many teachers come into the workshops looking for what I'll call the golden strategy, that one thing that they hear in the workshop that they don't have to do anything with it. They just want to be able to put it directly into their classroom the way it was presented with no changes, and that is going to solve all the problems in their classroom. Well, I have news for you. The golden strategy does not exist. We all have different personalities. Our classes have different personalities. And so the reality is that as I present things, and I'm going to be having you do some things in the chat room as well, the idea that, okay, how do I adjust this to fit for me? How do I adjust this to fit for my subject matter? Those kinds of things. So as we go through the workshop today, please be thinking about how can I take what Dr. Mike is saying and actually make it work in my classroom? Because just because it worked for him doesn't mean it's going to work exactly the same way for you. So I'm going to share my screen.
And don't you think too, Dr. Mike, that every class has like its life of its own?
Oh,
Every group of students are different. You could have a class period in period one that's totally different than class period number three, and et cetera. And that's
oh,
what kind of makes education fun, though, too, to try to figure out how that's going to work best.
yes, that's absolutely correct. And um, for example, when I was teaching in the classroom, I always kept really good notes on what I did in each period because I
Think we had some technology issues here. I froze. Dr. Ray, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
okay. So it was Dr. Mike that froze. It wasn't me. Okay. I thought
Yeah.
maybe it was my internet connection. We're having a little challenge today, aren't we,
And
with
I see
technology?
Ferris down there shaking his head, so he's hearing you
Yeah.
too.
Yep. Yep. No, that's okay. That's what happens sometimes when we're dealing with this. So it's kind of interesting when we start talking about the best instructional strategies, and that's really all dependent upon the class, the topic, and the grade level, everything. So I'm been really looking forward to seeing what Dr. Mike says.
You know, it's interesting, Dr. Jake, the whole issue of you can have the same lesson in more than one class, and
Yeah.
it just operates totally different.
Uh-huh.
The makeup of the class, maybe it's the presenter, maybe it's you change your words, and but Dr. Mike is so right. You know, these are great strategies. Not all of them will work for everybody, and not all of them will work time and time and time again. So that's the real value of being a trained teacher is you understand that things will be adjusted depending on who the students are, what the time of day is. You know, frankly, right after lunch, students usually are pretty sleepy, and so here he comes. Anyway, here we go.
Here's Miss Dr. Mike Beck. Mike, just one second. Let me make you the co-host again. You got kicked off. I always found too when I was teaching that first period was always like the test period, especially if I was teaching the same lesson the whole for 7 periods. The seventh period usually went way better, but sometimes it was worse than the first period
Yeah,
just because of how the kids would respond and interact and engage, and it just I mean that's what kind of makes it kind of fun too.
yeah. Sometimes you say, "Have I said this before to this class, or did I
Yeah,
say it to another class?"
right,
You know,
right. Yep, yep.
well, the first my when I first started teaching, I actually taught the same thing 6 times a day.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
wow.
And
Wow.
so I had to keep track of where each class finished. And generally, I never finished the entire lesson in first period. By seventh period, the sixth time I taught it, I finished usually about 10 minutes early because I'd already answered all of the questions that the student asked in the other classes. So, so also let me explain what happened in terms of getting kicked off. I'm actually at a cross country meet here in Idaho. I'm the announcer for the meet. Somebody else is doing it for right now. So I'm in my car and I have my laptop tethered to my phone for the internet connection. Well, I put my arm down and leaned on it and it broke the connection. So
Oh, no.
so that's what happened. I'll keep my arm away from that at
Yeah.
this point. So anyway, so now we'll go back and get started again. There we go. That will that will do much better. That's much better. Um, so as we take a look, like a thing in terms of student engagement, I'm not sure exactly where I dropped out, but it involves more than just teaching activities. There's things that you are doing. One of my superintendents, a gentleman by the name of Von Heinrich, this was a quote that he said all the time. Said the parents are sending the best they have. They aren't keeping the good ones at home, and it's our job to make them to take them as they are and to help them improve. And that really was a mantra of mine even before I started working for him. But the reality is that it's our role to help students become better. Now, some students are going to become better easier than others, but nonetheless, that's our job. So one of the things that I'd like to take a look at um, is a parent survey, because parent surveys are something that allow you to um, find out from the parents what what you ought to know. What are some interesting things about their child? But you can also change this around so that it would work as well uh, for um, for working with students. Excuse me. That's okay. Close out of this. So here's a copy of the student. I just put student interests at the top because that way you can make the adjustments based on whether it's something you give to the parents, to the students, those kinds of things. And I'm
I
not
don't
going to
think
read through this.
I don't think it's showing, Mike. I think it's
Oh,
showing.
that's because I didn't go back and do
Yeah.
my share of the document.
Yeah.
We'll get this all worked around.
Yeah. If you just share your screen, then when you go from one to the next, it'll just show whatever you're looking at.
Yeah, that's not okay.
I can pull it up too if you want to.
Yeah, well, the problem. Oh, I know what I need to do. Hang on. I think. I apologize for this. We'd worked this out before, and it. So, Jake, the problem I'm having is getting the zoom back up to the full screen. Oh, here we go. Never mind. Now I know what to do. Okay, and here we go. Okay, so here's a copy, and you're welcome to use. In fact, you will get at the end, you'll get a file that has this student interest survey. It'll also have all of the other materials that we go through today. but it'll also have, and Dr. Jake has said that he would be willing to do this, to take the work that we do in the chat room and uh, make those copy of that chat room available so that you can take a look at what some other people were doing as well. So the questions, as you're asking the parents, really come down to, what are a couple of your child's favorite activities, whether it's sports or, you know, whatever else kinds of things. What do they like to do? And in today's world, part of that may be playing video games, who knows? But, what are some of the things they like to do? What was their favorite subject in school last year? And then what achievements are they most proud of? What are the achievements are the students most proud of? Or maybe what achievements are the parents most proud of? And then what are the top two or three things that you want me to know about your child? And the idea is the more you know about your students, the better off you're going to be in terms of being able to differentiate things for them, but also to know what kinds of examples to use uh, in your classroom and those kinds of things. And there's always then the thank you. But this can be adjusted so it isn't for the parents, it's for the students. Again, this is the kinds of things that you can do. So here's activity number one. What I want you to do is to take a look at these sample questions that I've got there. But in the chat, I want you to come up with one or two questions that would fit for your classroom or for your subject matter, for your school. Whatever that would be, put that in the chat room. And if you'll do that right now, I would certainly appreciate that. And we'll review those chats here in just a moment.
I really like this, Dr. Mike, not just to get to know them, how to teach them, but to build that relationship because that relationship is so key, especially when you're first starting, when you're first getting to know this child. And for an elementary, like a kindergarten teacher, you might ask, "What is your favorite color?" And
Yep,
what is your favorite little book to read? So there's a lot of different
that's right.
things. And your high school students might have some different questions with that too.
Right, exactly.
Where's your
One of the
favorite place to
things that
travel to?
one of the things that I try to get my teachers to do on a regular basis was to contact parents by phone in those days
Hmm.
um, before the kids were in trouble. Because then when you ask for help and ask to know about their child so that you can help them, what parent doesn't want their teacher to help their child? And if you can make those contacts and get that information before there's any problems in the classroom, things will go much smoother with the parents.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Ferris has some great questions. You must be thinking about this, Ferris. What is his questions are, what is one thing you learned this week that really surprised you? That's a great
Yep,
question. Another one
yep.
is, if you could add a new subject to our school curriculum, what would it be and why? That'd be a good little discussion point too.
Okay,
Another one, which book or story we've read in class has been your favorite so far? Yeah, you could that definitely be a question you could ask later on in the course. Another one,
right.
what is the most important quality of a good friend at school? Very important. That'd be a good discussion point. Another one, if you were the principal for a day, what is the first change you would make? I like that.
Well,
Be
the
awesome.
And
nice thing about this is it involves the parents, and I think so many
Yeah,
times we forget to involve the parents. And if we
yeah.
just knew more, as Dr. Mike said a little bit ago, they're sending their pride and joy to your classroom. And their pride and joy might be a disruptive student, but if you know how the parents see them, I think you can help them.
And I like that, Dr. Ray. Another really good question. This is from some participants on Facebook. Who is your child's favorite author or writer? I thought that's really good. It just gets the parents to really think and know, are you reading to your elementary student? Do you know what they're reading? Are you involved in the different ways? Great question.
yep,
Fadila on Zoom writes, What do you see as as your child's biggest area for improvement? And also, they write, what do you see as your child's greatest strengths or skills? Excellent.
Yep.
That would be good processing for parents to think about that and really be able to outline that for a teacher, and a teacher to have that tool would be outstanding.
Yep. And it allows you to then make lesson plans that fit some of those interests and bring some of those interests into the classroom as well. Okay. That wasn't.
We're back on your PowerPoint.
Yep, back on my PowerPoint. Okay, so let's take a look at what is student engagement. And some of it is especially working on your routines and expectations. So what you're doing at the beginning of the class as the students are coming in. Most of you probably have to take roll, especially if you're in the secondary level. But how can you save teaching time by having things ready to go as the kids come in? We're going to talk pretty extensively about that. Then material distribution, transitions, handing out books, collecting papers, all of those kinds of things eat up time. And if you can work, we can work on some ways to help you save that time, which increases the amount of instructional time you have with your students. And then I'm going to share a variety of learning activities that are all pretty closely tied together, but that you can use again in your classroom to bring information out, especially from those students who normally they're not going to raise their hand, they're not going to answer a question unless you kind of pounce on them. But how can you get that information out to the other students so that every student has a voice in the class? And then there's some things in terms of around dismissal that we can talk about as well. So let's go to that first. And by golly, you were right, Jake. That worked out really well that time. Okay, so let's talk about
It didn't show up, Dr.
it's
Mike.
not
No.
really.
Yeah.
Okay, then I will go back to here. Share.
Share the entire window. I think what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a different window. That's what it was.
Yep.
Okay. So, in terms of beginning of class activities, and this is something that I learned uh, from other teachers after I started teaching. And that's in English, they generally call it daily oral language. You can call it daily questions, daily math. We had a talk show host that had the top 10. So they did the top 10 in their class. But the idea is to have a question on the board or a screen as the students come into the class or at the beginning of the lesson. So elementary, you might change this during the day a couple of different times to think about it. But the idea that the questions can be review questions from the material you taught the day before. It can be questions about the material that you're going to teach today so you can get a good understanding of prior knowledge that the students might have. About current events to see what kinds of discussions come from that. Favorites, there's a whole variety of things, and it will generally depend on what subject matter you're teaching. So doing something about grammar wouldn't necessarily fit in a class about science. So your questions really do have to kind of match what you're teaching and doing those kinds of things.
Of course, what you're talking about now is from uh, my favorite educator, Madeline Hunter. She calls this a set. If students know when they come into class, there's something on the board that they need to start thinking about or do, and
Yep.
if you do this enough times, it engages the students automatically before you even say a word because they know there's something on the board they need to think about or do or prepare. It's a wonderful way to get their interest, and it stays with them because they know that that's what the activity is.
Yep. Well, and the reality is it works just as well for graduate students as it does for
Oh,
for regular students. I used it all the time in my graduate classes.
well, Dr. Mike, you're doing it right here today. By you putting these things up on the screen, that is telling us all this is what we're going to do now. This is what's next. And so our minds, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm reading down all of his points as he's talking about them because oh, this is good.
Okay. So we're going into activity number two. And activity number two is in the chat. Write a question that you might ask in up on the board for the beginning of your class. Be sure to include the subject area that you are teaching in, you're talking about, and also the grade level, so that people can focus in the chat area in terms of ideas that are being shared that would particularly apply to them. So if you'll take a couple of moments and write some of those questions in. And again, Dr. Jake is going to share these, so you'll have these as a resource when we get done as well.
Wow, I was the first one. I had to beat someone else. But mine was science and mine was simple. Name the three laws of motion and give an example of each one. Just something that could be very, very simple.
Yep. It's especially interesting if you ask questions ab about what they think or what they thought about the material from the day before
Oh,
or what
yeah.
they learned, because then you'll get different responses. And the part of the idea is, if you can do the questions that has just one right answer or two right answers, but if you give questions that require some thought or some opinion or that might have more than one correct answer, now students, as as Dr. Jake just did, will compete against each other to see who comes up with the best idea.
Yeah. And it could be the precursor and the start of your lesson too, to jump into the
Yes,
next section. So, yeah,
absolutely.
I think those bell ringers, it's interesting. Madeline Hunter called them a set, but nowadays they call them a bell ringer
Bell
to
ringers.
what is posted on the board? What are questions that could immediately engage the students from the very, very start? And like you said, about time, maximizing time. Time is the biggest gift that we have as educators, and we need to utilize every second that we have.
Yeah, and I think it's good to respond to Aisha's question when she's talking about students from different cultures, different languages, and so forth, because the language they speak at home is not the language that's spoken in class. And so, my general answer to that question is make it simple enough. That,
Hmm.
simple enough. Don't make it too complicated, but make it simple enough that everybody can grasp what it means.
Right, right. And it's a great way to find out how well you did the day before in your teaching, to figure, see whether they actually understood what you taught, or again, especially finding out prior knowledge for what you're going to be moving into during that day's lessons. So great opportunities to work on that. All right, so let's move to material distribution. Now, this is one, again, that I learned from another teacher. I used it a lot in my undergraduate classes. It was not unusual for me to have between 60 and 75 students in a classroom. And so you can imagine how long it would take to pass out papers to that many students or to collect papers from that many students. Uh, Lots and lots of those kinds of things. Take roll, for example, at the university level and at the high school level. So the idea is if you've got the students working in groups, ideally you want to use 4 to 6 students that are sitting in the same area. Most of the teachers that, and myself included, I had tables so the students were sitting at tables in groups of 4 to 6. And the key is that each group has a folder. Now, the folder can be a regular folder that you would, manila folder or something like that, or it can just be two pieces of paper that are taped together, or a big piece of paper that's folded in half. The folders don't have to be fancy. There just needs to be a place to put things. And then before the class, all of the materials for that day that are going to be handed out are in that folder. And each folder, if you have them sitting at groups, you can just, automatically put them at those particular tables. Or the first person who comes in the group goes up and gets their group folder and takes it back to the table. When it's time to take out the materials, they just open the folder, they pass it out at the table. If they're handing in materials, it's just the reverse. They take their paper and they just put it into the folder, which you collect at the end of the period. There's lots of variations on this. One of the variations that I saw in a friend of mine's classroom was that he went a step further, and at each table he had a little kind of a centerpiece thing that had pencils and pens and tape and sticky notes and a variety of things the students might want to use during the class period. And they were right there on each of the tables. Now, the drawback to that was I know he was paying for all that, so those supplies himself. And not everybody has the funds to be able to do that. But the idea that there wasn't any need for a student to raise their hand to go sharpen a pencil. There was a pencil there in the caddy that they could take out and use. Again, saving class time, saving in particular instructional time. All right. This is the first, here's the first of our during class group activities. And it's think, pair, share. Some of you, I'm hoping that many of you use think, pair, share. Teachers that utilize what we call a stand and deliver, a primarily just lecture, don't think about using some of these techniques. But the idea is that everybody in the class gets a question or problem or whatever to think about, and they write down their response. And again, works best if there's multiple possible responses. Then the students pair up with their neighbor or whatever, and they share their response with their neighbor. And then the groups just share out. You can call in different groups. What about this group? What are the things that you guys came up with? What are the things that you guys came up with? And one of the keys in terms of directions on this one is that as you're going from group to group, if another group has already given your idea, then just say, it's already been said. Let's move to the next. And so it isn't constantly repeating the same things over and over again. As you go around, you could write the words. If it's single word kinds of things, you could write it up on the board or a screen or those kinds of things. One of the things to look at as you're doing groupings is to avoid groups of 3. And the reason why is that in groups of 3, invariably, 2 of the kids will talk to each other and the third one gets left out. For example, and I'll use this from my own household. I have 3 children. I have 2 daughters and a boy. My boy's in the middle. When they had friends over, we almost always required that all 3 of the kids had a friend over. Because if 2 of the kids had friends over, one of our children got left out. Now, once in a while, we'd allow just one child to bring a friend home, because then the other 2 could play and do those kinds of things. But if you have those odd numbers, invariably you're going to end up with somebody who feels left out, and nobody wants to feel left out. And so just take a look at that. This might also be used as a beginning of the class, part of the beginning of the class activities. You could do, rather than have them just hand in their answers to you, you could have them do a think, pair, share. And in terms of working with those kinds of things. So, activity number 3. In the chat, write down a subject area and grade level, science, history, so on, and a question which has more than one possible answer. We're really good about doing yes and no and, you know, one answer kinds of questions. Think of a question that has multiple answers that you would use with your class in a think, pair, share situation. So go ahead and do that.
There's a great question. I mean, I think in on Facebook, Hema wrote that this is a regular question that is provided. What is the last book you read, and what is another resolution you would write if you were the author? Think about the
Mm,
kind of the discussions that you could have, and I think pair share about that one. Or if you changed it and you said, what would the book that you just read together as a class? What could be
mhm.
another resolution for it? Yeah. Or Fadila writes on Zoom, how do you think the story will end? That's a great discussion for students to talk and discuss. I know another one that a lot of people like to discuss is what did you learn from the characters? What virtues are exemplified of the characters in the book? And that really talks about the virtues that we want to implement into our students to help them be good people. And that's always elicits a lot of good discussions.
Yep,
And then Fetish writes, how would you like to end the story adding your own twist? Yeah, get some creativity juices going on there with students.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The and this is a way that you're going to get responses from the students that will never say anything in class. All right. So there's think, pair, share. Here's a variation of that. And it's think, pair, grouping, and then share. And the idea again is you give the whole class a question or a problem. The the students then pair up and share with their response with their neighbor. Then two of the groups combine and share their information. So now you have groups of generally four, uh, maybe 8, sharing their information with each other, and then that information is shared with the class. That way, again, you can start to pull things together. I'll give you an example of something kind of like this. I taught a class on communication when I was teaching in the junior high. And I got that class because I used to work at a television station. So they figured I must know everything there is to know about communication. Wrong. And we didn't have a textbook. So in 9 weeks, we went from the origins of oral language to television commercials. And one of the things that we did is everybody wrote a newspaper article. Then they got together with a partner and chose which of their 2 articles was going to become a radio ad. And then when they got their radio ad done, then they would get together with another group and decide which one was going to become, which radio ad was going to become a television ad. And then they wrote the ad and they recorded it, and then that was presented to the classroom. So you're building things together by using these kinds of activities. All right. Now, another variation is a small group disperse and share activity. And this is, again, you give the class a question, but you have the students together in groups of 4, again, usually. Uh, I realize that not everything's divisible by 4, and it may be a group of 2 or whatever, but those things happen. So you give the whole, you then have them um, share their information within the members of the group. So everybody knows, and they write down what each person has said. Then you number off each person in the group. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the group split up and all the ones get together, all the twos get together, threes, fours, and so on. And each person in those new groups then shares all of the information that they got from their original group. And what that does is that by the time this exercise is done, every student has every idea that any student in the classroom has had. So that you haven't even had them share it yet with the classroom. They've already shared it completely with themselves. So then it becomes a situation of, okay, do any of you have any questions or particular ideas that you really think you want to share out to the whole group, even though everybody already has it, or questions about what did come up, those kinds of things. So here's a way for you to teach a great deal of material, and yet you haven't really talked at all.
Well, of
I,
course, what you're into right now. When I first started teaching, I taught debate. And one of the things when you're teaching debate is students have to be ready to debate both sides of an argument. And so it causes them to have to construct their thinking either for a proposition or against a proposition. But if they know they have to do both, they're going to think more creatively. And I have to tell you that they learned fast which arguments were more successful or which statements. For instance, if you've got a piece of literature and how do you feel that the hero of this was a kind person? We'll throw that out. And if they have to prepare an argument to say, yes, the hero was a kind person, but they also have to prepare an argument to say, no, he wasn't a kind person. How do you get them to think this way? And I want to go back to Ferris's question too, because, when you've got 40 students in a class, you might have 10 groups of four. You might not get to all of them, but you don't tell them in advance who you're going to ask. So they all have to be prepared.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Now we're going to move to exit strategies. And one of the strategies, especially for secondary folks, but you can use this at the elementary level as well, is that before the students are dismissed, and the reason I talk about secondary with this is because one of the big problems in the United States is that when the bell rings at the end of the period, the students think they're dismissed and they can just get up and go. And if you haven't, as a teacher, trained them that, nope, I dismiss the class, not the bell, and that one of the ways that they can get out of class earlier, the earliest, is to have the student write down their response to one of the following questions that you have given them as they hand out and you leave class. And again, one thing you enjoyed about the class today, one thing you learned today, what was the most important idea, all of those kinds of things. And then they just hand that to you. So that gives you not only an opportunity to control as they leave, how they leave the classroom, but also gives you an idea of what you did that day in teaching, what effect it had, a lot of those kinds of things, depending on which question you ask. So that's another thing. Now, one of the things that will not be in this material, because I just remembered it last night as I was writing up my notes and so on, is that you can also have an exit strategy for tests. So on a test, what I used to do was the very last question would be, what is or are one or two questions you either really wanted me to ask because they knew what the answer was, or that you thought I would ask. Write down the question and then include the answer. This does a couple of things. And I was not a big extra credit person, but I would allow up to 2 points extra credit for if they wrote down a question and they answered it correctly. Gave me new test questions for the next time I gave a test over that material. But it also gave me ideas about things that I evidently did cover really well, or possibly some ideas about things that I didn't cover very well. So it helps me to reflect as a teacher on my lessons and what I was doing with the students. Um, it's amazing the kinds of questions that they come up with. Um, and if you've got a class, I taught a gifted and talented class for a while, and they came up with some amazing questions, let me tell you. All right. So I'm gonna stop sharing this one. Go back to here and here. I'm just going to leave it up like this rather than take a look at switching again. So now taking the other thing about student engagement is understanding the common cultural and experiential norms. And for many of you that teach where the students are fairly homogeneous in terms of fairly fairly common socioeconomic status, um, interests, those kinds of things, you probably already know those, but you may not. So finding out some of those kinds of things helps as well. And that's where that surveys come in earlier. But the other thing is also understanding the community that are a part of your school. For example, one of the things that I learned when I worked in Washington, D.C., is that the students in those classrooms had no concept of where I had grown up. I went to high school in a very rural area. We were the only town in the entire county. It was 30 miles to the next incorporated town. Almost everybody was involved in agriculture. I drove truck, I worked on farms. So a lot of the examples that I thought about as I was preparing to be a teacher were agriculturally related. Well, I went to Washington, D.C. I worked there for a year, not as a teacher, but was in classrooms periodically. And you couldn't have asked agricultural questions to those kids, and not because they weren't smart enough to know, they didn't have the experience. I needed to ask questions about the inner city of Washington, D.C., and life there and the experiences that those students had. So it's important to really understand where your students are coming from and what they are doing. All right.
And maybe those could be some of the questions, Dr. Mike, when you start the course and say,
Yep.
what's background knowledge do they have? What kind of experience do they have?
Right.
And getting the parents involved in that too, because the parents are the ones who are most likely helping them form that foundational knowledge,
Yep.
that background
Well,
knowledge.
and in the first place that I taught, it was basically in an urban area, but right adjacent to our urban area and a large part of our school district was rural farms. And so
Mm.
we had kids who were raised in towns and kids who were raised on farms. And so understanding that back.
Oh, I think we lost him again.
Yeah, it looks like we did. That's okay. But yeah, getting that background knowledge is so important on what students have gone through, what students have experienced, and even what the parents know and do, and to help to partner together to shape the character of each one of the students. I think is so important. I know when I travel, and I know Dr. Ray, you do this too. I try to do as much research about the country that I'm going to and the people that I'm going to, so when I interact with them, it'll be appropriate. Or so I can the first one of the first things that I do, I like to learn about the different culture, the different food, and the different um, interests, so I can make that connection. And it's always such a wonderful way to make that connection that way. Well, I think Dr. Mike's had a few rough goes of it with technology today, but I think we're moving in a good direction. In the chat is the handout or the handouts, and I would encourage everyone to spend some time being familiar with the items that Dr. Mike has talked about. There aren't very many pages there, but those pages are packed with information. And some of these items, these strategies you're familiar with because many of you have been educators for a long time, and they've been things that we've talked about, you've practiced. But sometimes I think we need to be reminded of them just so we can make sure that we remember, oh, I have this tool in my toolbox. I can pull it out at any time. I can present it and utilize it depending on the class and what's going to most engage our students and what's going to most importantly maximize our time that we have with those
Yep.
students. So I'd encourage you to really, really get in and utilize that time. It looks like Dr. Mike, you're back with
Right.
us.
I am. And I know we're running a little short on time here because we want to have some questions from folks. But as you take a look at the handout, especially the PowerPoint presentation, why is student engagement important? Well, one of the things that people don't think about, and
Hey,
especially,
Dr. Mike, you have
yes,
a paper up
yep,
in
there
front
we
of you.
go. Sorry about that. I talk with my hands. Um, is student engagement, and this is on why it's important, it increases the perception of the school quality by parents. If the kids come home, the students come home and talk about what happened in school and how much they enjoyed doing it and those kinds of things, the parents are going to have a much better view of the school and are much, much more likely to continue their child's enrollment in your school, as well as to enroll any other students. Plus, tell parents around them, man, my kid really likes this school. You ought to think about those kinds of things. So, so the other thing that I want to talk about very quickly is the challenges of student engagement. And you guys can look at the PowerPoint at a later time. But one of the things is that if only one or two of your teachers in your building utilize student engagement, active student engagement, your school still isn't going to seem to be very inviting. If teachers in general are involving students in their education, they're actively engaging them, then the overall perception of the school is this is an inviting place. This is a place we like to be. And so being taking this material, working with your other teachers to make sure that people aren't just standing in front of the classroom and lecturing. There is a time for that. Don't get me wrong, but it's not every day all the time. And so again, you're pretty a lot of you involved in private schools, and so the idea is you need enrollment, and if things aren't going well, your enrollment is going to go down. And administrators, you are a key element in this. If you are out in the hallways talking to students, encouraging them, all of those kinds of things, then the students are going to see the school as being a much more welcoming place than if all you do is sit in your office and never go out and speak with kids. And the same thing when you are working with teachers in terms of their supervision. If you come from a standpoint that I am coming in to help you, not to catch you, the idea that my goal is to help you improve. Even if you're a really good teacher, my goal is still to help you get even better. And if you work with your teachers from that perspective, as opposed to, oh, I'm here to catch you, see what you're doing wrong, it will also start to be a much more welcoming school to your teachers as well. All right. And the last slide that would be on your PowerPoint presentation are 20 positive words of encouragement for kids. And I'm going to read through those 20, and then that'll be the end of my presentation, and we can go on. Number one, you make me smile. I love having you in my class. Your choices matter. Your opinion matters. You're an important member of this class. You can do anything when you put your mind to it. I'm excited to see you learn something new. Keep up the good work. It shows. Nobody is perfect, and that's okay. That was a hard assignment, but I know you can improve. Everyone makes mistakes, but you can learn from them. Making mistakes gets you closer to your goals. Today was a tough day. Let's make tomorrow better. Even when you have a bad day, I still like you. You are quite wise and mature even at your age. You brought a positive change in my life. You will do amazingly well. Just keep going. You've put in the work. Now it's time to apply it. You are someone who does not give up, and you are never afraid to try something new. When we use positive affirming statements with our students, they they absorb those. And from personal experience, most of you probably don't. I changed schools 14 times by the time I was a sophomore, and the teachers that I remember are the ones that truly encouraged me, cared about what was going on in my life, and helped me be a better student and a better person, quite honestly. And I think that's where most of you are at as well. So we'll close the presentation with that. Turn it back over to Dr. Jake, and we'll finish up.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. And you had some great words of wisdom, I think, to finish everything off and really help us think about the importance of what we do as educators, regardless of where we're at in the world. Parents want a great education. They want their children to have a better future than them. And we want to see families be strong, communities be strong, and nations be strong. And so thank you, Dr. Mike. Dr. Ray, we have some words of wisdom coming from you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation today. I especially like those last 20 positive statements because just makes somebody feel important when you make a statement like that. I have a couple of things. One is one we've had before, but I think it's important at this point, and it is this: the mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, but the great teacher inspires. And then, as Aristotle said, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And I put these in the chat room, so they're there for you if you'd like to use these, but we need to inspire ourselves and our students.
Yeah. And I'd like to say one more thing. I apologize for the interruptions that we had. They were all my fault. I laid my arm down and it cut the connection with my phone. So I apologize. But I think you'll find that there's some really good material there that's going to be available to you after you complete your survey.
Well, thank you, everyone. And in the chat, if you're following us on Zoom or on Facebook, we have posted the survey along with our Facebook page, our YouTube page. And please get in and follow us and take a moment and fill out that survey so we can get you your certificate. Please also make sure that we are not able to provide a certificate unless you write down 3 things you learned from the workshop. We want to make sure that we're providing certificates to those who participated, listened, and are involved in the workshop. And so everyone should be able to get in and do that now. And someone wrote that it is published. Hold on just 1 second and I'll republish this. There we go. Here's the link. There we go. All right, I'll republish this on Facebook and on Zoom. It wasn't allowing everyone to post that yet. So yeah, get in and fill out that survey. We'd love to hear your feedback. But again, make sure that you post at least 3 different things. This one was packed with a ton of information, so we encourage you to do that. If you want to, we're going to stay on for a couple of minutes. If you want to raise your hand or post something in the chat, we'd love to take your questions and give any guidance. It doesn't have to be about the topic at hand. It can be about anything that you want to talk about it in education. Ferris, welcome.
It's always a pleasure to be here, and no wonder it's midnight, but I'm still online and
That's awesome.
participating in this monthly webinar.
And
Thank you.
congratulations too, Fettis, on your own accomplishments with your book that we've talked about, and then also your presentations that are coming up soon in several different places. So congratulations.
and also the medal for running champion.
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, that's great. That's
Yes,
great.
that's cool. Thank you, Dr. Mike. That was brilliant because, to be frank, student engagement, like I put it into the chat box, is one of my all-time favorite topics. So I think this is maybe kind of a foundational block in terms of education and teaching and everything. And my question is very practical. I think I've had this question going on my mind for years. Perhaps you could try to help with your own insight because I'm sure you have more years of experience than mine. So my question is the following. How can teachers measure and evaluate student engagement in ways that go beyond participation? Um, just put it in
Mhm.
other words, maybe the student is participating in some kind of activity, but perhaps may not be truly engaged, you know? So I'm just curious about that subtlety, how to measure if the student is truly engaged. Maybe they are just participating, like you provided some think, pay, share activities where they're split into groups of four, but it would be quite a big challenge for the teacher side to monitor, who is engaged, who's truly on the same wavelength with all the other participants. I think my question is clear. I hope.
Sure. No, I understand because just because you have the student group to automatically participate, one of the things that will help is don't assume, and I should have brought this up earlier, so thank you very much for asking the question. Don't assume that just because you think the students know how to work in groups, that they do. Teach what happens in a group. Teach their responsibilities. And if you've got an ongoing group, what I did periodically was I would have the students fill out a grade for the participation of the other students in their group as well as themselves. And it didn't count. I mean, it wasn't a grade that they were going to get, but it gave me an idea. If three out of the four students said that student four never said anything or never participated well, then that gives me an opportunity to then talk with that student and say, all right, I understand you might be embarrassed or whatever, but why haven't you been participating? And that way they understand that they aren't going to get off the hook and just let everybody else do the work. And that's the same with working with group projects. Most students hate group projects, especially the ones that are the ones that are ahead in your class, because they end up doing all the work. But if the grade for a group project for each individual is based on the other students' comments about their participation in the final project, then students start to see that there is some accountability for whether they're involved or not. Another way to think about this is when you start asking individual questions like the exit question, ask questions where the students have to demonstrate some knowledge of what went on in the class. So, for example, you might ask, what were one or two of the ideas that were brought up in your group? So those are some things that, but yeah, you're exactly right. Just because the kids are in a group does not mean that they're going to automatically participate. And the teachers, you have to work on it. But the idea is that the more you hold them accountable for participating in those, the much more likely that they'll start going, okay, I want him to quit asking me all those questions, so I'll just do it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
great
right, some
question.
great ideas.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any other questions from any other participants? You can post it in the chat, or you can post it or raise your hand. Um, yeah, it'd be great. Dr. Mike, what was one of the most favorite lessons that you taught that you were able to gauge students over the years?
Um, Surprisingly enough, it wasn't a science lesson.
Oh,
And
okay.
I described it a little bit earlier. When I taught communication, watching those television commercials that they had videoed and acted in and did those kinds of things was was amazing to me because I, I literally we didn't like I said we didn't have a textbook. So I was trying to build things along so that I didn't have to go back and keep reinventing the wheel. And the students enjoyed it. They really had an amazing amount of fun taking their newspaper articles, turning them into radio ads. By the way, the radio ads they had to record on
Hmm.
a voice recorder. Then they took the when their group chose which radio ad they were going to make into a television commercial, then they had to write the group had to write the script. They had to star in it. Somebody had to run the video camera. All of those kinds of things. So everybody had a role to play as they
Yeah.
moved through. So that was probably maybe my would put it my most satisfying one. I had lots of fun teaching science.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I I love to make things blow up or smoke or do all that kind of stuff. So it was always a lot of fun, but I think probably the most satisfying was watching these students go from nothing in and moving all the way up to we were using VHS tapes. That tells you how long ago it was. But the idea that they actually were going, oh, so these are the steps that I'm watching when I watch on TV.
That's great. Yeah. Well, Dr. Ray, do you have any lesson that you think about that you thought was exemplary?
Well, of course, as I mentioned earlier, when I taught debate, I loved
Wow.
to see students who had to think both ways. And you think
Yeah.
about all the things that are happening in our world today, and everybody has an opinion. But what if you had to make an argument for the opposite opinion from what
Right.
you have right now? And I love doing that in debate class.
That's great. Yeah, we've seen many, many great lessons across the world and in so many different countries, so
Yep.
many different schools. It's just exciting to see. I've been in some schools in language classes that I did not speak the language at all. At all. I didn't have any idea what the teacher was saying, and I could tell that there was some excellent, excellent instructional practices going on.
Yep.
Just great, great to see. You know what good instruction is when you see it and you see the students engaged in learning, and you can also feel that relationship that the students have with their teacher. And I think that's where you see everything coming together that needs to come together for students to learn. So thank you, Dr. Mike. I think we have everyone who's a lot of responses already to the survey, so we appreciate that. Our next workshop is in November. And we're excited to have Mr. John Barlow presenting for us. So we're going to skip October and go into November. We find that these months that we're focusing on are the highest attending months. And so we want to maximize that. And so you can take the month of October off. We'll see you November 15th. And it's about lesson planning. And that's so important to engaging students to make sure that you have things organized and set up. So we will see everyone November 15th. And then if we're coming to your part of the world, please follow us on Facebook. We will be posting where we will be doing workshops. We'll be visiting many, many schools, and we look forward to seeing many of you in the next few months. So thank you again and have a wonderful weekend. Some of you, the weekend is coming down to a close here soon, but we appreciate you attending and always trying to improve your teaching to help improve each one of your students in their development and their improvement. So thank you again and have a great weekend.